So I was scrolling around the interweb the other day, and I found a pretty interesting article where ESPN was going over and ranking every roster across the National Football League. So in today's video, I'm going to be reacting and giving my takes and responding to what ESPN said. And then at the very end of it, I'm going to give you my roster breakdown. So be sure to stick around and tune in to see what I have to say for my own thoughts. So I just want to ask you this real quick question. 4th of July is just around the corner. So what are your plans? Like, I'm going to be going over to my folks' house. We throw this big party. My dad, I'm not kidding you, he puts out pallets of fireworks and lights them off. We can send them off in our neighborhood. It's a lot of fun. So I want to know what you guys are doing. Are you cooking out? Are you going to the bar? Are you headed out to the lake? You taking a vacation? Let me know. I want to hear from you, Who Dat Nation. So for our roster breakdown, ESPN, there were 5 categories that we're going to be breaking down. The first one, biggest strength. Then we're going to be going to the biggest weakness, X factor, a non-starter to know, and then the roster rank at the end. So the biggest strength was edge rusher, according to ESPN, and this is what they had to say. It doesn't get much deeper than what New Orleans is bringing to the table. Cam Jordan is still playing solid ball as he enters his age 35 season, and he won't need to play a full-time role with Carl Granderson and newcomer Chase Young in the mix. Even after losing Tano Passanio to an Achilles injury in the offseason, the team has additional highly drafted depth players in Isaiah Foskey and Peyton Turner. So I want to hone in on 3 specific players, and that is going to be Chase Young, Cam Jordan, and Carl Granderson. Because I'm not here to upset anybody, but I'm here just to kind of share my thoughts. I do believe your starting defensive ends, it's going to be Chase Young and Carl Granderson. And between the two of them, they had a pretty good sack production last year, but Cam Jordan only 2.0 sacks for 2023. However, something that I want to hone in on, and the number I specifically want to look at is the pressures, and that's the number at the bottom of your screen. 66 for Chase Young, only 7.5 sacks. The pressures, he had 45 for Cam Jordan, but only 2. Carl Granderson had 58 and led to 8.5 sacks. So what I want to see from New Orleans is turn those pressures into production, because if just one of those players can turn a 10th of those plays into sacks, I mean, come on, that's a lot better production for New Orleans. And for the Saints last year, they tied for 28th in sack production with 34 total sacks. So New Orleans has to be better at getting back at the quarterback. So in terms of the biggest strength, I don't necessarily agree with ESPN. I think the biggest strength is actually going to be something I reveal a little bit later. I almost spoiled it, but I'm not going to do that here yet. So the biggest weakness, interior defensive line. ESPN saying that, the inside of the outside is the strongest part, but the weakest part of the roster, the guys playing right in between them. So an offensive line likely to be without Ryan Ramczyk was a candidate here, but defensive tackle remains a major issue. Nathan Shepard, Brian Brzee, and Colin Saunders are all back from 2023, though none from that trio has played more than 53% of the snaps. The good news is that the Saints are deep at edge rushers, so Dennis Allen has ways of getting creative along the line. Now, I have some gripes with this, and to be quite honest, I actually like the defensive line rotation, and I don't think that is the worst part of the team. Like, by no means is defensive interior the weakest part of the team. It definitely could improve. I definitely think that the depth chart could have better talent, and I think that players like Colin Saunders and Nathan Shepard definitely could play better. However, let's not ignore the fact that Brian Brzee was a rookie last year. So the fact that he was 3rd in sack production, putting up really, really good football week in and week out, the fact that he is not getting love here just kind of baffles me. Like, he shined as a rookie. He looked really, really good. And to be quite honest, I am stoked to see what he can do in year 2. He has the ability to really build on the skill set that he has already. That this kid was recruited, let's not forget, this kid was recruited as one of the top recruits in his class coming out of high school. And then coming out of college, he was one of the best defensive linemen and defensive interior players and one of the best defensive guys in the draft class. There was just questions because he didn't play a ton due to injury and due to off the field, not issues, but off the field personal matters. And this player is really talented. I think he could be really, really good. And I also think that Christian Boyd is a big-time sleeper. I really, really like that draft pick. So I want to hear from you, Saints fans. ESPN said that the strongest part of the roster was the defensive ends, but the weakest part was the defensive tackles. So I want you to scale the defensive line for New Orleans. 1 to 99. For me, I'm sitting somewhere around in low 80s. Let's call it an 83. Because I definitely think that it's not a bad unit. I think it's a quality unit, but I definitely think that they could be a lot better. So the X factor for 2024, it's actually the offensive tackles, both Taliese Fuanga and Trevor Penning. And I actually do agree with this one from ESPN. And why they picked the offensive tackles? Well, let's show you. Trevor Penning posted a dismal 73% pass block win rate at tackle in 2023. If you don't know what dismal means, it's really, really bad. And Fuanga is a rookie. And rookie offensive linemen, even first rounders, tend to struggle. The odds are stacked against this pair being able to protect Derek Carr. But if they can, the Saints offense can be solid. Now, the offensive line for me, yes, the tackles are very, very important. I do think it comes down to Taliese Fuanga. I do think it comes down to Trevor Penning. But I also don't want to let Nick Saldiveri and Cesar Ruiz off the hook. Like, the offensive line entirely needs to be better. And in my personal opinion, the entire operation, this entire plan, everything that the New Orleans Saints have been trying to build this offseason completely gets derailed and completely gets thrown out the window if the offensive line, not just the tackles, but if the offensive line as a whole does not do their job. The new scheme, I will say this, with Klint Kubiak's offense, should at least mask the issues a little bit better. I'm not saying that the offensive line will be better. I think it should help. But even if it isn't like extraordinarily better execution, I think that the new offense will at least mask the failures and mask the issues a little bit better. So I'm excited to see how this offensive line looks. I think that Nick Saldiveri is really looking the part. Cesar Ruiz has been losing some weight. He's been gaining some muscle. He's looking really athletic. So we'll see what happens with this offensive line. But I think that not the tackles, the offensive line as a whole is an X factor. So non-starter to know, hey, ESPN, a couple days ago, I put out a video that said ESPN doesn't know ball. I guess they listened to me because they put down a non-starter to know is A.T. Perry. And hell yes, abso-freaking-lutely. A.T. Perry, I'm telling you right now, this kid deserves every single ounce of credit, every single ounce of love. This guy has the opportunity to be a massive playmaker in the National Football League. The size, the speed, the athleticism, the catch, the hands, everything that this guy has is really, really good in the National Football League. And I want to just throw it over to ESPN because I just had to get my little rant out. Thank you, ESPN, for getting right. Hell yeah, A.T. Perry deserves some love. Now, A.T. Perry gets his first shot at being the third receiver for a team that used 11 personnel on the majority of offensive snaps last season. He caught 12 passes for 246 yards and 4 touchdowns as a fifth-round rookie out of Wake Forest, including 4 receptions for 29 yards or more. It means a quarter of his catches were at least 30 yards. That's pretty wild. Can he possibly build on that performance in a larger sample size? Well, I think that he can, and here's why. I've been calling this kid Scary Perry. Like I said, the body control, the size, the athleticism, this guy has the ability to completely contort his body, completely change his positioning in the air, and it's really, really impressive. He's a big play machine. The guy is a lightning in a bottle. I mean, if the ball's headed in A.T. Perry's direction, you can bet number 17 is likely going to make a play. He also has very, very strong hands. You were able to see that in the picture we just showed you a second ago with him up against the Vikings defensive backs. And we also saw it against the Rams. We also saw it against the Falcons. A.T. Perry has very, very strong hands, and he's dangerous at the point of catch. He's also really good at creating and finding space. He's good at finding the spots where the zones aren't really lining up, and I think that he does a good job in terms of his route running. Maybe not in terms of the route running, but in terms of creating the separation off of the route. I think he does a good job with that. And he's a one-on-one nightmare because if you just got to get him the ball, throw a jump ball, I guarantee you your least favorite team's number one cornerback doesn't stand a freaking chance. So really quick, got to check in with our June sub battle. Falcons today is kind of kicking our ass, Saints fans, but we're not too far behind. So I need your help. Let's get at least 30 subs on this video so we can catch those frauds at Falcons today. Lock us in, subscribe for daily Saints videos, live shows, and a whole lot more. All right, we went through ESPN's roster breakdown. Now it's time to share my roster breakdown. Actually, it's not time to share my roster breakdown. We have one more. I can't count. My bad. I'm sorry about that, guys. Roster rank number 20 across the league. Can you believe that? Isn't that absolutely ridiculous? The 20th best roster. Now, I understand. Some bad contracts. There's definitely some talent that name value might be a little bit better, but are you freaking kidding me? You're saying that the Saints have the 20th best roster? Absolutely not. They are, in my opinion, a lot better than the number 20th roster. And where ESPN ranked the NFC South, they gave the Falcons the 19, the Saints 20. And I will say this, I do agree with that. I think that the Falcons and the Saints are pretty close in terms of the roster. And I also think that the Buccaneers are pretty close as well. But for me, I'm taking the Saints a little bit higher, the Bucks and then the Falcons, and then the Panthers at 29. They're just not really a good roster at all. But I just think that, I hate to say it, all three of these teams right here were just a little too low in my opinion. At least the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that 22 might be a little too low. I mean, I could honestly be convinced 19, 20, 21, but they all should be a little bit higher. Really quick reminder, if you haven't already, I actually just picked up my 22 Rashid the Need for Speed Shaheed jersey, and you can get one too at chatsports.com/Saints jerseys. We also have jerseys available for current players, for rookies, for legends. We got the home, we got the away, color rush, the throwbacks. We got everything you want. Just get it at chatsports.com/Saints jerseys. It'll take you to Fanatics. You'll get a Nike authentic, real, high-quality jersey. It's just a way for Fanatics to know that we sent you so that way we can get a little bit of love back. So if you guys want to help us out and support the show and get yourself some gear, use the link in the comment section and description of this video. All right, my roster breakdown, this is where I'm rolling with. Biggest strength, going defensive back. I think that the DBs, the safeties, cornerback room, I think that is one of the best units in the National Football League entirely, but also I think it's the best one in the New Orleans Saints. The weakness for me is the offensive line as a whole. I don't think it's one specific spot. I think that the offensive line entirely just needs to be better. For my X factor, I'm actually going to go with Klint Kubiak's offensive scheme. I think that whether or not his offense in the play calling and the ideas and the creativity, if the vision isn't there and it does not work, doesn't matter who you have on the roster. Doesn't matter who you have on the defense. Doesn't matter who you drafted. If the play calling and the decision making at the coach's level isn't performing, you're going to have some bad execution on the player side of things. Non-starter to know, I actually would have gone with A.T. Perry, but I'm actually going to say Bryan Bresee just to be a little bit different. I think that Bryan Bresee is going to have a great, great year, and I actually did a breakdown on why I think that he's in for a big year too in a video just a couple of days ago, so check it out on the channel. And for my roster rank, just went up a few spots to number 16. I think that's a little bit fair. I think they're about as league average as it gets. I think the New Orleans Saints are an aggressively average roster and in all aspects. So I don't think that anyone can disagree. They're not a terrible roster. They're definitely not one of the best rosters, but, right in the middle somewhere. Now, I want to ask you this question, Saints fans. Who's going to have the better season? It's going to be Derek Carr or it's going to be Kirk Cousins. Just give me a 4 or give me an 18 down in the comment section. And thank you so much for tuning into today's program. Y'all stay golden. We'll see you next time.